Um, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ange Takeda. Today, I'll be talking about my research, applications of technologies in the automobile industry to the mitigation of the Bullwhip effect. So we have to talk a little about the background of my research. Um, when we talk about the supply chain, most people also think about the simplistic way of one direction flow, which begins to the supplier until it goes to the final customer. However, when we think about supply chain nowadays, we know that's way more complex than that, that it only don't deal with only the flow of product with one directional flow. It's actually can go both directions, and it can deal also with information, services, financial, and knowledge flows. And it becomes something more like a web instead of just one line. My research is going to be focused more in the logistics part of the supply chain, and also more regarding the information flow of the supply chain. When we talk about the Bullwhip effect, there are um, some factors that affect the Bullwhip effect. So, for example, ordering policy, forecasting policy, and delayed shipments. What happens is that the order, it actually goes up in a degree of magnitude upper than the demand. So the order is actually higher than the demand. And that happens because of how these policies or how the person in the next part of the supply chain interpret or their relation or their communication with the person before. And it makes that they should, in their ordering policy and their forecast policy, they should order more or have more products in stock. And when that happens, it just happens not just in one point of the supply chain, it actually goes consecutive. And when that happens, the next person in the chain orders more, and the next person orders more and more. And this propagates throughout the supply chain. That's we call it the Bullwhip effect. When we see a simplistic image, it would be most like, it's usually like this. You start with the person with the least demand that the customer wants something, and then the other agents of the supply chain order more and more and more material from the person until the end, until the supplier, and it amplifies what was being ordered before. And there are ways to deal with the Bullwhip effect. For example, one of the ways is making smaller batches. When we make smaller batches, we can order just what the person asks instead of saying a whole pallet or a big lot. So trying to reduce the smaller batches as much as we can is also a way to reduce the weak effect. The ideal is one unit if we can do it, but that's one way to do it. The other thing is about the person filling just in time or failing. We'll talk about the delays in shipment. So this causes this this miscommunication or these failings cause this the need to order more. So also improving communication policy between the agents also helps to avoid this kind of stuff and to guarantee the just in time. So when that happens, that's also help to reduce the Bullwhip effect. But the question becomes, in what conditions can the application of IoT technologies in logistics reduce the Bullwhip effect? Because it's almost consensus that by applying IoT, we can reduce the Bullwhip effect. That can happen, but in what conditions can that happen? And can the opposite even occur? So when we talk about higher ROT can be used to mitigate the Bullwhip effect, there are other applications in IoT, for example, like cyber physical systems, cloud computing, artificial intelligence. However, I'll be talking about mostly about cyber physical systems. And inside that, I'm also going to talk about the enterprise resource system, or the ERP. And okay, so now that we talk about where and which technologies are going to be applied, um, there are actually some in the literature, some research like what were the critical success factors to implement the ERP in the company. 5 of them is advanced hardware and software, training and development, top management support and commitment, change management, and project management. So when we talk about advanced hardware and software, it's almost self-explanatory or kind of obvious in the sense that the company should have the most up-to-date technologies or hardware and software so that when they implement their new system, new ERP, they can have the best performance or they don't get behind their competitors because it takes a lot of time, effort, and money to do it. So you might as well do it with what is more up to date, so that you don't do something that's already not being as practiced anymore. So there is that, and the second one is training development. When we talk about training development, there are actually 2 points in that. The first one is the worker that's going to use the systems in the shop floor, for example, they should get the most of the new technologies. And if they don't know how it works, they will not be able to do it. There might be new functions or something, getting some information that could be faster that they simply don't know. But if they get the proper training, they can just know like everything they need and get everything out of of, the new technology. The second point in this training development is that acceptance of the new system, because when we want to change something in the company, there is a lot of resistance in what the workers are doing before in their legacy system before. So they have their own habits, they have their own procedures, and because of that, you're gonna find resistance when doing this kind of changes. But if they have the proper training and they buy into what the changes are gonna do for them, it's gonna make it easier as well. The point 3 is top manager support and commitment. That's really important because if you don't have the support of the people, the top management of the in the company, the project will not go forward, and you will not get the proper support and the proper cooperation with other departments, because they might not take you seriously or they think the project is not important enough. So there should be someone in top management giving this continuous support and getting your back when doing this kind of implementations. The fourth point is change management. So when we talk about change management, I talk a little bit about in number 2, but all the procedures that they could be, for example, in paper, and you want to do it paperless, like they're going to be changed. So people are gonna have to get used to changing how they work, or that's something that I've been doing for maybe 10, 20 years, because we are gonna get rid of the new system and we're gonna make a new one. So this procedure wise, there needs to be a change. That's what it means by being this change management. It's the management of the activities itself. And finally, the final point is project management. It's also really important, but it's not correlated to number 4, is that the person in charge of this kind of implementation, or the charge of the project to implement the ERP, they need to know a clear and achievable goal in the end. And they also need to know how to do it. So it has to be something that is achievable and clear. And they need to take the proper steps in how the project goes to reach that goal, simple goal that they want. And you need to have one person in charge, because someone has to take responsibility when taking the project for it to go forward. So these are the 5 points, or the 5 critical success factors for implementing ERP in a company. But they don't touch the point is that, do these technologies always have a positive impact on the Bullwhip effect? Or can these technologies go in the other way, can also actually have a negative effect? And how does these technologies impact human behavior in a way, in a company setting, that actually affect the Bullwhip effect? So can that happen as well? The way that I'm going to approach this problem of my methodology is, I will identify a suitable company sample to do it for a case study, conduct a survey with the company, and then after conduct the survey, determine the behavior factors that can change and the negative effects of the implementation of these new technologies. And after that, I can do a comparative study with this negative effect with the other ones that have overwhelmingly positive effects on other companies. And then after I understand that, I can know which factors were crucial for success or failure, for reducing the Bullwhip effect. Not much in the implementation, but more in the reduction of the Bullwhip effect, because they can be successful in implementing, not necessarily means that they're gonna have a reduction in their Bullwhip effect. So what are the possible results and expectations of this research? Is that the most obvious one is, I will obviously see in yellow the information sharing between customer and supplier. You obviously see a change in that with the application of new technologies, because that's where it's going to be we're going to see the first effect is going to be on that. However, the ones in green, like ordering policy, forecasting policy, or delaying shipment, that I did that, but they also could be just in time. So other factors besides delay, these external factors. So if there, how these 3 ones are going to be changed with these new technologies? So when those new technologies can actually affect human behavior, that you're going to change our ordering policy, or we are going to change our forecasting policy, and this kind of changes in the policy that they have, so human behavior. The other point that we might also see is that even if if the people are willing to change their ordering policy, they're willing to change their forecasting policy, they buy into the project, they want to do something about it, but there might be physical limitations in the company that they cannot change the lot size of the shipment. For example, they cannot ship less than one pallet because of how how they do the shipment to the next person in the supply chain. They cannot change the inventory area because the inventory area cannot support the product flow that they want to make. So the other one is production capacity cannot do small batches. So because of limitations of machine, for example, that or the production line itself, that they can only do in certain number of batches and big, that cannot be changed. And doesn't matter how much we want to change the ordering policy or forecasting policy of the company, there will be this physical limitations that need either more investments or more thought through about how to do it. So in conclusion for this presentation is that there is an agreement in literature about what are the critical success factors for the implementation of ERP. The literature, however, does not go further if the success implementation necessarily have a positive effect in the Bullwhip effect, even though that what should be expected. And in the end, technologies are only tools for management, but to actually see changes in that, we also need the human factor or the human action. Um, there's some limitations also for this research. For example, it mostly focused on the ERP and its impacts in the supply chain. However, there are also applications of IoT in the automotive industry that can also be done, like I said before, but it was not focused on. And also, if even if the management and workers are willing, there might be process or physical limitations to the company that do not let them change it. And maybe there is more research about how we could do that as well. So thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for paying attention.